Now, Sekiro is obviously shaping up to be probably one of the already contenders for Game of the Year. Everyone seems to love it, but I think the same issue that I have with it is the same issue I have with a lot of the games from Miyazaki and from Software. It is, at its core, a Soulsborne game. So I brought Matt back in to discuss that exact point. And it is a different kind of Soulsborne game. And this was always the thing. I've played Nioh, and I appreciate Nioh, and I played a fair bit of that. But I think the movement and the kind of the motion in that, it's a little bit more Ninja Gaiden-y than this. Like Sekiro, even at its core, even with the parries and even with all that, it still feels much more Soulsborne-y than you would think by looking at it.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things, or the big the draws that I've come from playing Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, is that it feels a lot like a game. So From Software has had its hand in a lot of Tenchu games development from PlayStation 2 onwards. So they weren't exactly the pioneers, but they made a lot of Tenchu games a little bit later on throughout its course of its lifespan. And I found that it felt a lot more like they wanted to make a game similar to that, but in order to capitalize on that mainstream appeal that they've gotten over the last 7 years with Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and onwards, last decade, they had to incorporate those kinds of elements to make it a bit more digestible for the mainstream as well as the hardcore.
And I guess that is probably my core issue with it. So the big one that stands out to me is, you know, the one when you're in the Ashina Castle and you've got the guy standing at the top of the stairs, he's got the 5 riflemen around him, right? So jumping down and killing those riflemen is really tough because obviously the way Soulsborne combat works, more than 2 enemies, you're really starting to struggle. Do you know what I mean? Especially when you're talking a boss with a bunch of other ones. So it's still, even at its core, feels like that same Soulsborne. Like you've got to find a way to pick them off. And so then your option is either like not like shuriken them from the roof or like jump down, kill him, jump up. Jump down, kill him, jump up, and then fight him. But then if you lose, you got to do that again. And so it seems kind of at odds with itself sometimes when it does that. Do you know what I mean? Like, the funny part with it is, I still want to keep trying to play it because I'm enjoying the narrative and I'm enjoying the way that it's dragging them all together. Like the setting's cool, the aesthetic's really cool. It does a much better job of kind of telling its story without going too hardcore into like finding bullshit to find the lore and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like that was always the problem I had with Dark Souls.
It feels a lot less like an excuse of like, oh, you just didn't read the item descriptions, you didn't check the Wikipedia, you didn't take a look at like 20 of these YouTube videos, which is completely fine, by the way. Having that extra supplementary information is completely fine. But it's my same argument with stuff like Halo, where it's like, you know, the narrative isn't well woven within the game. It's like you got to read a couple of novels to understand it. Like, but this in particular, one of the good draws I brought from Sekiro was, like, the narrative is a lot better. There's a lot more dialogue. They're a lot more kind of set in their ways. Like, I guess the luxury of not having a custom character and having someone who's designed from the ground up, from the studio themselves, you can have a far more involving, intimate narrative. And I think they've kind of nailed it in Sekiro.
And again, that is its strength. From watching like people play it who were previously good at Soulsborne games or good at that kind of stuff, the narrative is more driving, and even though Sekiro himself is a little bit of a Gordon Freeman, like he speaks, but it's kind of, you know, my lord, and all this kind of, you know, like, well, because people I watch it playing goddamn English for whatever reason, right? Doesn't matter. Oh, it's a different conversation.
The default is Japanese.
Yes.
Okay.
See?
As the game tells you at first. Default.
But it is that thing of, it really does have that more traditional story-driven experience, which is fine. And I think works for it and actually entices me to play it. Whereas previously, like I say, with Soulsborne, the issue I'd find is I'd get to the thing and I'd be like, you know, I'd get there and just be like, what is this? My biggest problem, of course, is that you look at it and you think that it's going to play like a Ninja Gaiden or it's going to play like a Devil May Cry. Because I just come off Devil May Cry into that, and it is just a completely different style of game. Like, the skills aren't even necessarily translatable. And I much prefer a Bayonetta or a DMC over a Bloodborne.
Yeah, it feels like Sekiro in particular wants you to play the game in a particular way, or not in a particular way that suits you, but it's a way that they want you to play it.
Yeah.
So you've still got the areas, like you got a chest-high wall cover, you've got the areas that you can scale, you can jump and do all sorts of cool acrobatics, you can cover yourself in reeds and, you know, lure enemies in and all that sort of stuff, which is completely fine. But the thing is, though, is that again, it's all just relegated to busy work. You're not using those kinds of stealth mechanics to fight the bigger bosses. You still got to hit with posture and deal those death
And it might take off one jar, but one thing, but it's not going to completely kill it.
Another big issue as well is the utility of the prosthetics too. They only seem to kind of want to be used in one particular fashion. Like you use the axe to break shields, you use the shuriken to knock people who might be suspended in the air, for example. They're like a lot of the other Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne in particular. The prosthetics seem to just have like one relegated use, and that's about it. There's no real other ways that you can utilize these sort of prosthetics or these sort of strategies. So that's a big drawback.
It is.